Hello, and welcome to this series of 3 workshops on the pastoral relations system of the United Church of Canada. My name is Earl Rayburn. I'm the Pastoral Relations Minister for Northern Spirit Regional Council of the United Church. This evening we're going to be taking, as I say, a look into the pastoral relations system of the United Church, and we'll begin with some slides. First off, to show you the areas of the United Church that we're speaking of when we talk about regional councils. This is a map of the denomination across the country, and you'll see here is Northern Spirit, one of the largest geographical regional councils in the United Church of Canada. Because of that, we're very grateful for the technology that we've come to learn how to use, especially well during this pandemic era. And it helps us to reach out to the vast spread of congregations that we have in this part of the country. In order to place ministers into pastoral charges, we have the pastoral relations system, and the people in our regional council who are on the commission, the Pastoral Relations Commission, so making decisions about pastoral relationships, approving them, and kind of overseeing the placement, are the people who are listed here on this slide, the members of the regional council. And you'll see that we have some very strong leadership, ordered ministers, also lay people, and representing the different parts of the regional council. So in this first session this evening, we're going to particularly talk about community of faith profiles. And by the end of this time together, we're hoping that you'll have gained some experience in creating and using holy manners, that you'll be able to identify the roles and the responsibilities in developing a community of faith profile, that you'll be able to list the different components of a community of faith profile, that if you were to read a profile, you'd be able to make recommend some improvements that might be helpful to the committee that is writing it. In our next session, a week from now, we're going to be looking more at the search and the selection of ministry leadership. And so in that session, we're going to be just looking at the different streams of ministry leadership that are part of the ministry teams in the United Church. We're going to talk about how to identify and effectively respond to issues that might arise because of the different ways that pastoral relationships end, whether that might be a request by a minister to end the pastoral relationship, or a retirement, or a medical leave that's extended, or it could be the request of a pastoral charge to end the pastoral relationship. So what are the dynamics and issues that arise in the different ways a pastoral charge can end, or pastoral relationship can end? We also will take some time to become familiar with the key components of the search process and the different issues that might arise during the search process. We're going to take a look at equity and human rights considerations and how to have a fair interview process so that everyone who makes application to serve your pastoral charge is treated equally and fairly. We're going to describe the factors to consider when discerning if a community of faith should be a supervised ministry education site. We're going to also talk about the different administrative elements that are related to the search and selection process. So who makes the decisions? How does the flow go through the process? And then in our final session, we're hoping that we'll by then be able to look at things like how to log on and navigate through Church Hub, which is the relatively new online platform that we use for pastoral relations. To be aware of what Church Hub can do and what it can't do. To find prompts that will aid a community of faith in using information from the financial and ministry review that we provided to all the pastoral charges in the regional council. So how to look at the results of that and understand what it's telling you. To then look at some difficult questions that might come up, or some simple questions too that might arise as a congregation or a pastoral church is creating its community of faith profile, and just to learn how we can provide some guidance to those questions. And then, of course, there are going to be some more complex questions with regard to perhaps changing terms of a call or an appointment. What happens when a pastoral charge realizes that its resources are getting low, whether those are financial resources or even people resources. And so how do we guide conversation of discernment through those times? As we begin this series, as we begin this evening, we would invite you to come and just reflect in a moment of contemplation, the ground on which we stand, and using these words from our Song of Faith. So I invite you just to relax for a minute, to remember that the Spirit of God is always with us, and to take a moment just to become aware of the Spirit around you. And hear these words. We sing of a church seeking to continue the story of Jesus by embodying Christ's presence in the world. We are called together by Christ as a community of broken but hopeful believers, loving what he loved, living what he taught, striving to be faithful servants of God in our time and in our place. This is the hope we carry for our work together this evening and in the weeks and months and years ahead as we are the communities of faith in Northern Spirit Regional Council. We're going to begin now with a bit of humor, talking about what it's like to work together as communities of faith. And so we'll enjoy a slide presentation, or a video presentation.
This man right here is my great-grandfather. He's the first cat herder in our family.
Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy.
Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half-wild short hairs, well, that's another thing altogether.
Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here, and if you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds, you know?
You see the movies, you hear the stories, I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do.
I wouldn't do nothing else.
It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, ain't a feeling like it in the world.
EDS, managing the complexities of the digital economy.
Sometimes when you're working with congregations and leadership teams or boards, selection committees, it feels somewhat like you're herding cats. And one way to prevent some of those issues of feeling like you're herding cats is to use holy manners, is to start your conversations with that, and then to have continual reminders of what you have agreed to in terms of how you will communicate, so that you can hopefully avoid some of those feelings that you are sometimes herding cats. I think many of us, if we've led groups and led meetings, have gotten into situations where we've thought, oh boy, how do I dig myself out of this now? This is not going as I anticipated. And so we're suggesting that using holy manners is a good idea. Sure. Before we go any further, I should introduce myself. I'm Susan Silverthorne, and I've been working with Earl to develop these educational sessions. Another key member of our team is Kathy Jackson, and you'll see that she's in the background later on, but she's been a key person in ensuring the success of these sessions. And let's move forward. So what we're going to do is go into breakout rooms in the next couple of minutes. Earl's got actually a very good slide, and I don't know if you can advance to that as an example of holy manners from, Earl, help me, Living Spirit?
Shining Waters.
Shining Waters.
Regional
Shining
Council.
Waters. They've got a good example for us to look at, but what we're going to ask you to do is go to your breakout rooms and go through an exercise of developing some holy manners. So what do you need in the next 2 breakout rooms? I think we've got a couple during the next few hours. What do you need from your co-participants in your breakout room to have comfortable, healthy, safe communication? And so you'll be naming behaviors that you'd like to see in each other. It, it can be in meetings that I've been in, it can be no eye rolling. Speak slowly so that I can hear. I have a hard time processing. So if everyone could speak slowly, whatever it takes so that you are comfortable with what's going on in the dynamics in the group. So we'll ask you to go into breakout rooms. We'll give you, I think we've suggested 10 minutes that we'll give you for that. And once we're through that, we're going to give you a poll to ask you, was 10 minutes the right amount of time? Was it too long, too short, just about right?
So, here are some examples of other holy manners. Working together as a team, sharing responsibility, information, and decision-making. Listen respectfully to all ideas, even if we don't agree. Work toward consensus. Encourage the quiet to speak and the talkative to listen. And so, as you go into the groups, we would just ask that you consider these 2 questions. Are there other things that you, are there other items that you would add to this to accomplish your work? And how do we call each other back when holy manners are being breached? So those are the 2 kind of talking questions we would like you to use. Kathy has set up the breakout rooms. Kathy, can you launch everybody into them?
And before you do that, Kathy, just before you do that, as you start your breakout rooms, please identify a reporter, because when we come back together, we're going to do a round robin and just hear the suggestions that people made. What we're hoping to do, as an aside, what we're hoping to do after this session is to record much of the feedback that you've given us, get it documented, and then we'll have that for you to refer to. So you don't have to feel like you need to madly take notes as to what other people are saying to capture good ideas. Hopefully we'll be able to capture that for you. And by the end of the series, we'll get some notes out to you. Okay, Kathy, take it away.
Okay,
please.
The only thing I wanted to say is the breakout rooms have numbers and names. And so if you remember your number, you'll remember the letter of the alphabet that your tree name starts with. either way, we'd like you to remember the numbers and or names so that you can go back into the same breakout rooms again later. Okay, that's it. I'm ready to open the rooms.
There you go.
So what we want to do is just do a round robin and ask people to give us one idea from your group, or you can give 2 ideas from your group. And if you can, as much as possible, not repeat the general content that someone else has already given. So do we want to start with group 1?
So we had to be open and curious, to include God in the conversation and listen for that holy whisper in our discernment and decision making.
Thanks. That's great. Group 2.
Okay. So respecting each person's input, and that includes letting a person complete their comment, but also making space for silence.
Okay, great. Thanks. And group 3.
This is more a question than a comment, but someone said they don't like parking lot meetings afterwards. How do we make sure that the conversation gets said in the meeting? And then there was actually, that was addressed, because apparently the manual, the United Church manual, addresses this in the Holy Manners section.
Okay, great, great tip. And anything else from that group?
From group 3, yeah, sure. How do we avoid or deal with confrontation?
Okay, again, more of a question, and I'm going to suggest that we pull that question. So Earl, you can keep us honest here. I'm going to suggest that we pull that question to session 3 to discuss it, because we're going to be talking about some difficult conversations, thorny questions, and getting some ideas pulled out of the group for that. So we'll pull that question for session 3. Group 4, I believe we're into.
We spent time talking about holy manners in the manual. So we didn't really add to others that we think might be important for accomplishing your work. We did spend a few minutes talking about how do we call each other back when holy manners are breached. And one of the things that was lifted up was to invite the whole group to take a breath and just sit in the quiet for a minute. And perhaps it's a wonderful opportunity to invite prayer as a way of recentering and refocusing.
Okay, great, thank you. That was group 4. Group 5.
We talked about establishing roles at the beginning. So why am I here? What is my purpose? What are we all about? And at the end, we also talked about it's more than just about being polite, having holy manners. It's about how we're going to conduct ourselves because we are there for a purpose.
Okay. And group 6?
Yeah, the main sort of addition we had to holy manners was just that people agree that that phones and exterior communications would be set aside for the duration of the meeting. So there would be no unholy distractions.
Yeah, something we didn't have to address years ago and do now. Any other new ideas from the group? You're at the tail end, you're at a disadvantage.
No, I'm happy with that one.
Okay, and so let's do a little bit of a round robin. We'll go in the other direction. We'll start with group 6 and some ideas about calling back, 1 or 2, if you want to present those. So group 6.
To have the holy manners posted either on the agenda or on a screen, so you can be reminded of them visually as needed.
Great. And group 5.
I don't know that we got to that question.
Fair enough. Group 4.
I think I shared that in the first round, sorry.
Yeah. Group 3.
Yes, that's when my grandson, who we're looking after this evening, came in to say goodnight to me. So I'm going to ask Charles to say it a bit. He had a good process, and I'm going to ask him to give it because I didn't get it recorded very well.
Good.
Excellent, thank you. My suggestion was have an increased level of awareness by, again, making all participants aware of the holy manners in advance of every meeting where you could apply. And secondly, in advance of applying the holy manners, to also have the commitment to ask the group to call us back or call you back if for whatever reason you step outside of the holy manners. The suggestion is awareness and an increased level of willingness to be called back.
Yes, and that's a good point, because often as members of the team, we look to the leader to be calling us back, and we don't take personal responsibility for calling each other back. So good point. Now, help me. Are we on group 3?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. On to group 2. Thanks.
The only thing we have to add to that is that it's helpful to have some humor when people are getting intense or upset.
Yeah, good point. It helps to laugh at ourselves, doesn't it? And group 1.
We would add making sure at the beginning that people have adequate information so that there's some kind of equitable understanding of what's expected, to be clear about the roles and the role of, yes, who is responsible and how do we do that graciously.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm going to go back to group 6. Anything else that hasn't been mentioned that you want to bring out?
Nope.
Group 5?
Nope.
4?
Nope.
Already did. 3?
I think we sort of dealt with this, but I'll just say it. Let people finish before jumping in. And this is especially important in online meetings.
Good. Okay. Group 2?
One thing we talked about was being mindful of how frequently you speak. And those who are not speaking.
Yeah. Yeah, fair airtime. Good. And anything else from group 1 that hasn't been brought out? I think that's you, Ruth. Nothing else? Okay, good enough. Earl, I'll turn it over to you. I think we're ready for a poll. So what we want to hear from all of you is, how about the time that we allotted for the breakout room? Was it too much? Not enough? Just about right. So Earl's going to put the poll up, and if you will vote, and we'll see the results right away. And here we have the results of our poll, and we can see that the breakout session certainly was not too short. Few people thought that it was about a third thought that it was too long, and 2/3 approximately thought that it was just right. So thanks very much for your feedback and for participating in the poll. This will help us in planning future sessions. All right, and now Earl is going to take it away with a quiz. We're going to test your skills.
So not Earl, yet. Not yet.
Oh, not yet. Sorry.
No, not yet. There we go. So there are a number of people who are involved in this pastoral relations process. And here are just naming some of them: the incumbent minister, the minister who's there or the minister who's leaving, the local governing body, so the official board of the church council leadership team. There's also the regional council, and particularly the Pastoral Relations Commission, which again is the body in the regional council that makes pastoral relations decisions. There's the Pastoral Relations Liaison, and as the word liaison suggests, that's a person that goes between the Regional Council, Pastoral Relations Commission, and the community of faith that's working on their pastoral relations process. And the Ministry and Personnel Committee would be another one. And of course, in the case of a change of pastoral relations, we might also add the incoming minister to that. So we wanted just to go over kind of what the different parts of who makes what decisions and whatnot. So this is where you're going to get quizzed afterwards. So listen. So when a minister is deciding to leave a pastoral charge or a pastoral relationship, the first thing that they need to do is to inform 3 bodies in the church. One is, of course, the official board of the local, of the community of faith. Another body that the minister needs to inform is the Office of Vocation. The Office of Vocation is the part of the church. It's a general council body that kind of keeps track of where ministry personnel are. They also have some other functions to do with discipline and such, but they are involved in the credentials of a minister. And so we need to have them informed as well that the minister is moving. And the third body that the minister needs to tell is the Regional Council, the Pastoral Relations Commission, because the Pastoral Relations Commission is going to put into place the process by which change happens. And what we do is we accept the request. The Pastoral Relations Commission accepts the request for the change and appoints a pastoral relations liaison. And that person's role is not like in the old system where that person where the presbytery reps would have gone and sat in all the meetings and been a part of that joint needs assessment or joint search process. Now what happens is the pastoral relations liaison is kind of a guide or a teacher who makes contact with the board, the local governing body, and guides the board in the steps, the things that need to be done in the creation of a pastoral community of faith profile. So the role is a teacher, and then that person is available if the board or a committee that the board might appoint a search team or a writing team for the community of faith profile. The pastoral relations liaison works at training that body, whichever body it is, in what needs to be done in order to create the profile and do the search as well. And so that's the go-between person. They remain a resource. The board or the search team can call them and ask questions and get guidance, and so that's part of what they do. They go in at the beginning to train about the profile, the community faith profile. Then they go in later to talk about the search process with those who are going to be doing it, and finally they'll go in once a candidate has been chosen by the search team or the board. The liaison will go to the meeting of the congregation where the congregation approves the call or the appointment, and is the regional council representative at that meeting. And then final role for the liaison is to be the regional council representative at the covenanting service, and to make sure that the covenanting service is arranged and does that in concert both with the incoming minister and the local governing body. So that's what the pastoral relations liaison does. And finally, the Ministry and Personnel Committee, they actually don't have a role in the creation of the community of faith profile or in the search. where their responsibility is to, if there's an outgoing minister, to ensure that that person is appropriately celebrated and thanked. Also, that if there are any administrative matters, to make sure that those are taken care of. But in terms of the incoming minister, Ministry and Personnel Committee doesn't have a role until the person is about to arrive, and then they arrange for a welcome to come. And so that's kind of their first role in supporting the pastoral relationship, is to make sure that a warm welcome happens. Any questions about the different roles there? You may have heard that while we're in the pandemic and not able to meet, well, except until last night, apparently, that the official board has the authority to make some pastoral relations decisions, and that's a special consideration that's in place only during this pandemic period. Normally, the board wouldn't have the authority to do that. It would need to be the congregation that approves the call or the appointment. But for this time, that authority is given to the local governing body.
Question?
Sure, Roger.
Thank you, Will. One of the challenges is I find is that although you have different roles within the pastoral charge, very often the same people are doing everything.
Yep.
Which presents a challenge in terms of separating out different roles. Do you have some thoughts about that?
Well, it's really important, as far as we can, for people to be wearing one hat, if at all possible. But as you're identifying, in a smaller congregation, that's not always possible. So it's very important for an individual who finds themselves in dual roles to know which hat they're wearing at a particular time, and to remain in that role in the process for whatever occasion it is that they're working on. So just in terms of this, I'm trying to think where there would be an overlap. Well, a member of the Ministry and Personnel Committee might find themselves on the search team, or might be on the board in creating the community of faith profile or doing the search. So it's really important that, again, that person knows, okay, this evening's meeting is a search committee meeting or a writing meeting. That I'm not a ministry and personnel person tonight. I'm doing this other role. They bring a bit of background, which is why it's helpful to have them in that role. But at that point, they need to really try and separate out from being a member of the Ministry and Personnel Committee. Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay, good. So I'm going to give you another little quiz to do here, and a multiple choice. Go ahead and see how you do with this. So there are 4 questions for you to answer. So who's responsible for alerting the Regional Council of a request for a change in pastoral relations? The correct answer is the incumbent minister. So the minister needs to write a letter, again, to 3 places. 1 to the official board or the local governing body, also to the Office of Vocation, and 3rd letter is to the Pastoral Relations Commission of the Regional Council. And it's up to the minister to let them know The board chair, M&P committee might know that this is happening, but the official word comes to the regional council in the letter from the minister. Who's responsible for making sure a covenanting service is arranged? Well, it's a bit of a joint effort, and you're right, the incoming minister has some role in it, and the local governing body also has a role in it, but it's really the pastoral relations liaison who is going to make sure that the covenanting service is arranged. Doing that on behalf of the regional council, because question number 3 is, who gives final approval to the call or the appointment? The local body actually does not give any approval to a call or an appointment unless it's a short-term supply appointment. But it's the community of faith locally that approves a call or an appointment. The Office of Vocation just simply gets the word that the appointment has been made or the call has been approved. It's the regional council that actually has the final approval of that. So the community of faith needs to approve it first, and then it comes to the Pastoral Relations Commission of the regional council, and the regional council has final approval on the call or the appointment. And so you see, that's why the Pastoral Relations Liaison then arranges the covenanting service, is they're doing that on behalf of the regional council who has approved the call or appointment. Who arranges for a warm welcome for the new minister? Well, good. In fact, everybody kind of does. Not the outgoing minister. That person has got other things to do, getting ready for their next warm welcome, wherever that is. The local governing body might have some role. Pastoral relations liaison might come, but really it's the Ministry and Personnel Committee. That's their first role, is to make sure that the minister is comfortable, and whoever the minister might be bringing with them, and is warmly welcomed by arranging different events and ways for the person to meet the members of the community of faith. And
Earl, we've got a question on the chat. What if the minister is not the one requesting the change in pastoral relations? Would they still be responsible for informing regional council?
Yeah, so that's a bit of a different situation. In the case where the community of faith meets to make an end to the pastoral relationship, then it would we would need to send a pastoral relations liaison to a meeting of the community of faith. There's a very kind of careful procedure we need to do in that case, and the pastoral relations liaison in that case would bring word back to the commission, but we would need to see the motion that was made at that meeting, we being the Pastoral Relations Commission. So in that case, it would be up to the local governing body to make sure that motion was sent to the regional council. The regional council cannot end a pastoral relationship unless it is instructed to do that by the Office of Vocation for a disciplinary reason. That's the only time the regional council can do that. And so those, I think, those are the 3 ways a pastoral relationship can end. Is that any other questions about that, or?
That's it.
Okay.
Monica, thanks for putting that question forward.
So, Earl, it's Lorraine. I do have a question.
Yeah.
take my hand down. So who did you say, when you talked about the official board, the church council as a local governing body, what can they approve during a pandemic?
They're given authority to make decisions on pastoral relations matters. So they actually can approve a call to a new minister or an appointment. I believe that has now been extended to the end of March, that authority. Gord, Gord might know.
I was thinking, couldn't remember if it was June or earlier. It will be General Council Executive made that decision. General Council Executive will tell us when the rules are going back to normal.
Yeah.
I would assume.
Yeah.
Which is always a dangerous thing to do, but yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Good.
Well,
Thanks,
Stuart says in the chat, June 30th was the
June
last
30th.
one.
Okay. Yeah, they've been doing it about 6 months at a time. We'll talk a little bit now about the Community of Faith profile and just kind of what it is. And so the purpose of the Community of Faith profile is, and this is how it's laid out in the manual and the materials that support it, to articulate the Community of Faith's witness to the gospel, to articulate the ministry needs of the Community of Faith, and to summarize the Community of Faith's resources and community context. So, really it's saying, this is who we are, these are the resources that we have, and it's very important that this be an honest articulation. We don't want to get into a situation where somebody is making a decision to leave a position and move to a new place based on, say, financial information or the longevity of a church's situation, and when that's not reflected in the material that they're reading or seeing. So it's very important that this be done honestly. There are different components of the Community of Faith profile. So there's something called the Living Faith Story, which we're going to talk about in a minute. There's also demographic information, the financial viability assessment. We're now calling, in our regional council, we're now calling this the financial and ministry viability assessment, because we want to see a little articulation of not just your financial resources, but also what's your ministry and what's your mission about as well. There's a description of the property that that Community of Faith has, a position description for the ministry leadership and other staff people, and if it's applicable, if the official board has sat with the pastoral relations liaison and discerned that their Community of Faith would be a good place for a student to do their practicum, then the Community of Faith profile will describe the learning opportunities and the resources that are available to support that. And if the Community of Faith has a MANTS, then there's a MANTS report that needs to accompany the Community of Faith profile. And all of these things go on to Church Hub. And so every church has an account on Church Hub where they enter the profile information. And we'll be going over that in the third session that we have, how to navigate that, where you find these things. Drop-down menus is essentially it. Every minister also has a a ministry personnel profile on Church Hub, not connected to the Community of Faith profile. and it looks a bit different. So what a minister sees on their Church Hub account is different from what a community of faith sees on its Church Hub account. And so it's this is where the minister enters their resume and their other information. So this is where people can find basic information about the community of faith, is by looking at the profile. It's where the administrator, so that might be your board, a person on the board, or if you have an administrator in your church office, that person might have access to be able to update contact information for the community of faith. It's where the statistics about the community of faith are found and are entered every year. So we used to do blue forms. Those are gone. Now you update your statistics through the community of faith account. It's also where the General Council Office files forms and other information about the pastoral charge, such as the annual General Council assessment. So if you go on to the Community of Faith profile or Church Hub account, that's where you can find information about the assessment from the General Council. There's a place where you can find the call or the appointment form that the Regional Council has submitted. It's posted in a documents folder in the on that profile. And very importantly, through the Church Hub, the search team or the official board, if they're acting as a search team, and ministry personnel who are looking at potential other potential positions, this is where they can find each other, where they can connect. So that Community of Faith posts a vacant position description on Church Hub, and ministry personnel who are looking for a new position can have access to that, and the search team can have access to the list of ministers that are looking and eligible to look for positions. And it's the Office of Vocation Minister that puts the ministry personnel information on Church Hub, whereas the Regional Council puts the Community of Faith information up there.
Next, we're going to show a short video. And although it's a humorous interlude, it's a good reminder that writing our living faith stories is a new experience, and we don't have clear blueprints to give you in order to write your living faith story. So as the months unfold and we gain more experience with writing our living faith stories, we'll be able to develop that blueprint and we'll be able to build the airplane on the ground.
Some people like to climb mountains. I like to build planes in the air.
I grew up wanting to be on a wing, wanting to be up this high.
Sometimes the temperature up at altitude will reach 60 below. It's brisk, it's refreshing.
You never know what you're going to come across up here. Canadian geese, mallards,
owls. These people back here, that's why I come to work. That's why I build airplanes in the sky.
We're not just building a plane here. We're building a dream.
I love this job.
I get a lot of thanks up here. When I look over there and I see that little kid, the look in his eyes, that's all the thanks I need.
So living faith stories are a new thing for us in the United Church. And for a bit of time, even Church Hub was a new thing and was being developed as we were in our new structure already. So it was a little bit like building the plane in the air. So what we want to just make the point of the video is, don't worry about innovation in the process is okay. You're going to do your best. There may be things where you need to reach out to your pastoral relations liaison and ask for assistance. All of that's okay, because we know that this is a new process, and you're learning it on the go, on the fly. Susan, did you have any other things to add there? Okay. So, the Living Faith story articulates the community of faith ministry focus. We want you to see it as an opportunity to share why you exist as a community of faith. All communities of faith are expected to have this Living Faith story written, to review it regularly, to share it with the regional council so that we can determine what kind of support would be useful to you. And the Living Faith story is an opportunity to look into the future and see where God is leading the community of faith. And sometimes that's development of a new ministry. Sometimes it's acknowledging that a community of faith is struggling, and that God is leading them to consider partnership with other communities of faith to share resources in common, so that that all the communities of faith can continue to offer ministry in whatever way they're able to. So different things can come out of developing the community of faith, the Living Faith story. It can be a spiritual practice for the community of faith as it reflects on its ministry mission. An intentional way of engaging communities of faith in articulating their purpose. When we're dealing with changing cultures, it's an opportunity to ask questions about how the community of faith understands its particular ministry, how it might need to change. And it's an invitation to articulate and assess, and perhaps even reframe how you're being the church. So it's a real time for people to take stock, to really discuss what it is they are as a living faith, or as a community of faith. It's living, which means it's meant to be changed, meant to be updated. So what you write at the beginning is the first chapter. Other chapters will follow, and it shows the humanity of being a community of believers together. It's a faith story, so it's rooted in the community's identity as a Christian community. And it's a story, so it's not a policy, it's not a constitution, it's a narrative, and it speaks from the spirit of the community, honestly acknowledging the challenges and including the hopes of that community of faith. So we're trying to capture all of these things in this. It can also be a written document, but it could be done in a video presentation, could be done in, they have storyboards, things like that. All of that kind of thing can be uploaded into Church Hub and can be posted there as your Living Faith story, or a combination of all kinds of things. So you can be quite creative about putting your story together. This is, so when the Pastoral Relations Commission looks at your profile, these are the kind of things that they want to see in the Living Faith story. And so as ministry personnel, as lay leaders, as pastoral relations liaisons who are guiding a community of faith to put it together, this is the kind of thing that we would hope that you would encourage them, or that you would want to see in it and encourage them to include if they've overlooked something. So this is where we are, this is who we are, this is how we live together as a faithful community, this is what God's calling us to do. This is what we've tried that did not work. It's okay to put that kind of thing in your profile. This is how things are changing around us. So everybody's putting, this is how the pandemic has affected us in their living faith stories at this point. This is what puzzles and confuses us. This is what we have no interest in. This is what we hope to be. This is where we think we should start. And this is the kind of ministry leadership that we need to encourage us, to inspire us, care for us, and to remind us of who we are. So if this is articulated in the profile, in the Living Faith story particularly, then a minister who's looking at it, or an interested party who's looking at finding out about your community of faith, this should give them a good picture of who you are and what you're about. Okay, I'm just going to actually take us back because we want to send you off into your breakout rooms again and to talk about the creation of a living faith story. And this is kind of going to be our last exercise for this evening. So we want you to go and think about what you would be looking for in a living faith story. And so the ministry personnel will have one perspective on that, and the lay leaders will have another. So we'd like you to share those ideas and bring them back to us. So again, we'd ask you to have somebody who's going to speak on your behalf. We'd also like you to create some questions. What are some good questions that that could be put before the people who are creating this community of the living faith story that would elicit the kinds of things you're looking for in it? Okay, so does anybody have any questions about what you're being asked to do there? I can see Susan. Yeah, go ahead.
And again, please assign a reporter before you start.
It's all right to bring us back also some things that you've seen in church material that shouldn't be there. Again, if ministry personnel want to say, you know, if I see this in a profile, I'm not interested. And also, if you lay leaders have some ideas about, you know, this should never be put into it, then let us know those as well. Okay? So going to send you off and have you just kind of workshop that for a bit. But essentially, the questions are going to be just what do you want to see? So I'm typing it in now, and somebody can maybe cut and paste it into something they can take into the breakout room. Also, do you want to not see? So those would be kind of the three that would come to my mind.
Okay, Kathy, I think you're on to send people back. Yes?
Okay, see you all in 10.
Let's tackle question 1 first, and we'll have to do a rapid round robin because we're running out of time and we've got 3 questions. So group number 1, what did you come up with? What would you want to see?
So things that we would like to see are a sense of dream and vision, And what participation is there in the greater community? I'm only going to give you a couple because there's other people to share.
Good, perfect. Yeah, so just one or two for each group. Thanks, Ruth. Group 2.
No, we were not the recorders, but a comment that I wrote down that one person made was they would want to see what the congregation was actually doing towards some of the goals that they were outlining.
Okay.
And as somebody else said, that they would what they would like to see was to be actually naming what is really happening. So honesty.
Okay, thank you. Group 3.
What programs are offered by the Community of Faith? For example, Stephen Ministry, UCW, Church School, etc.
Okay, Group 4.
We talked about what is it about your church that makes you unique, your growing life. Those are things we'd like to know about.
Okay, and I'm going to go back to Group 3 because I'm afraid I cut you off, Peter. Did you have more to add?
I did not.
Okay, all right. Group 5.
We want the congregation to be upfront about what their struggles may have been in the past and what they're looking for in the future, because as ministers looking for a job, we can kind of read in between the lines, and we would wonder what they haven't said in their profile.
Group 6.
Thanks. We would like to know, we would like to see what the minister is not responsible for, where, and if not, then where does that primary responsibility rest? For instance, youth group, seniors. So what the minister is not responsible for to avoid assumptions. And similarly, but not exactly the same, particularly in part-time service, but in full-time as well, what happens when the minister is not working? So for instance, what happens to worship services when the half-time minister is not working, hospital care, that kind of thing. Two other things that others haven't covered that I'll offer to you briefly. And one is a question for pondering. Is it important that the Community of Faith outline whether they are looking for ordained minister, diaconal minister? And if so, we would like to know that the congregation is agreed on that. So that's a question, not a statement, of whether the congregation should say if they would be looking for ordained or diaconal. And the fourth, a broader question about how do they see themselves in this future that they are articulating.
Okay, great, thank you. So the next question was, what would you not want to see? And I think it's what would maybe turn you off or turn you away from a congregation. So let's start with Group 6 and go backwards.
Sure. We don't want to see that an old-fashioned iteration that looks as though somebody has just picked up something from somebody else that's unoriginal. So we want to see, we don't want to see things that are unoriginal. We don't want to see the old iteration. We're looking for somebody who can take care of the children and the old people. You know, what do you mean? We also don't want to see the assumptions that people are still making in some situations where they get caught up in the visual and they think they see themselves having a man likely of a certain age and a certain race and all those kinds of things. So we don't want to see those kinds of assumptions. And in our group, we've been surprised by how often that is in fact the case.
Interesting. Okay. Group 5. What don't you want to see?
They talked about volunteering at the Edmonton Food Bank in their profile, and people got a little too detailed about how many hours and all the products they brought in and how much they did, and there was just a little bit too much information there. And then maybe tongue-in-cheek, we said we do not want them to be leading a convoy to Ottawa.
Right. And Group 4.
But having a few people with trucks is not a bad thing. Because you could use the trucks.
I think Catherine said it very well. We talked about we would like to see them be honest. So Group 6 said it very well. Not use same old. but be honest about what they're truly looking for.
Let's see, that was group 4. I think group 3.
This is kind of along the same lines, but the words revitalize and working with young families, which are more generally stated as unrealistic expectations.
And that's a common one, isn't it? Group 2, I believe we're on.
I don't believe we have anything further to add.
Okay, and Ruth, group 1, anything new?
The children are the future of the church. Otherwise, nothing new.
Okay. That's a common theme, isn't it? Okay, and then the last question is, what questions might you pose as the liaison or the coach to help draw out some of these ideas? And let's start with group 1 and we'll go forward.
So what are the dream projects? Where is the excitement, the energy, or the spirit? And what might someone hear on the street?
Okay, group 2.
We never got to that question.
Okay, fair enough. Group 3.
We had one of the more taciturn groups of United Church folks that I've encountered, and we did not have that one answered.
Okay, group 4.
Unless someone else in my group thinks that we did answer it, I'm not sure that we got to that particular question.
Okay. So this is a good indication that we could have used a little bit more time on in this breakup. And what are we on group 5? I'm taking notes. I'm multitasking and not doing it very well. Are we on group 5, I think?
Yeah, we are. And we didn't get to that question either.
Okay. And group 6, anything to add?
Briefly, yes, briefly, we are looking for fresh and uplifting questions. And so referring back to group 1, the questions that Ruth was offering are the kinds of questions we'd look for. But overall, one more comment, and that is, how do we get the group to focus on candidates who are qualified for this particular position?
All right. And Ruth, do you have any more questions in your list that you want to throw out?
There was, how are you involved in the wider community? What partnerships do you engage? What have you learned from the things that didn't work? If you cease to exist, would anyone notice? And if so, what would they miss? How has the last 2 years shaped your ministry? What's changed? What are your fears? Where's the hope? Where's the spirit?
Okay, so this is a good example of some angst that I might feel as a participant in this workshop, feeling like, oh, I'm going to miss these things because I didn't write down fast enough. So we're going to ask all of you that were reporters, if you will send your comments into Kathy, your ideas into Kathy, so that we're sure that we have the full list. And that's going to be included in the package that will come out of this session. So you'll get a copy of all of the PowerPoint slides and the feedback that came out of the breakout room. So we don't want to miss these good ideas. So if you'll send those into Kathy, and I think she is going to put her email into the chat so that you can capture that. One other thing as we close, we want to get some feedback to you as to how useful this session was. So we're going to be sending an evaluation out to you online. It shouldn't take more than a couple minutes to complete, but it would really help us if you could get it back to us fairly quickly. We'll try to get it out by Friday. I think Earl and Kathy, we can probably accomplish that. And so if you could give us some feedback, we'll be able to improve for next Wednesday's session. And to help us with that, we're asking that each one of you send your email to Kathy so that she's sure that she has it, so that we can then send the evaluation out to you. So I thank you very much. It's been very enjoyable to be part of this. And Earl, I'm going to turn the closing over to you then.
So again, I want to say thank you for spending the evening with us, and potentially the next 2 Wednesday evenings. This is really kind of key work for us to be doing right now, because creating this kind of description of who a community of faith is it really, helps the community of faith to assess their situation. It also, if there's going to be discussion between communities of faith about coming into partnerships, this gives them a sense of, well, this is our identity. This is the unique place we are, the unique resources we have. And then coming into a community about partnership allows them to have a sense of identity and autonomy when they're discussing working together. And that seems to be an important part of United Church spirit, is the combination of autonomy and yet being together. So thank you for being here, for learning about this part. And as you say, every community of faith is supposed to create the profile. And so whatever role you have in your community of faith, you're now a resource for that work. And thank you for that. And thank you for being part of Northern Spirit Regional Council. We have Yellowknife and Fort Nelson. We have Wetaskiwin and, all over the place here. So it's a big area, and you're all very important parts of the people who are the United Church of Canada in this part of the country. And we thank you. We appreciate your time. We give thanks for your faith, your wisdom, your devotion to God, to others, and to the community that we belong to. So thank you for that. And the Spirit is with you. The Spirit is always with you, surrounding you and giving you opportunity to see beauty, to encourage others when they're needing support, and to celebrate the people around us and God's Spirit among us. So blessings on you in the week ahead, beyond if we don't see you next week, and do look forward to seeing you then. So have a good night, everybody. You've earned a good night's sleep. So, bye for now.
Thanks.